If you needed a get right game, I guess the Rams came to the right neighborhood because they're going to be playing the Carolina Panthers this week. The Carolina Panthers, of course, firing Matt Rhule. Go check out that video. Talk about rebuilding the Carolina Panthers because I think this is more of a Rams focused preview to me. This is kind of has that feel because the Rams, week 5 was not good for them. It showed that they got some obvious problems with this team. And you look at Matthew Stafford's stat line through 5 weeks, 5 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, one of the league leaders in interceptions. And he just has a problem right now that he's just locking in on one guy. And if you're a Cooper Rush fantasy owner, you love it. But not a lot of people who enjoy watching the Rams are loving what they're seeing from this team. Why do you think this offense is so bad, Kyle?
Because literally week 1. So I will tell you this. I was driving up from San Diego to Sacramento for the Bills-Rams game. And when I got back, I started watching the game. And my first instinct, and I made a whole podcast after the fact, was, oh my God, Matthew Stafford looks so broken. And they can't open up the playbook because he just physically can't do the things that he was doing even last year. And from that point, I looked at that and said, Stafford, you're not ready to play. Like, he had elbow surgery coming in recently. He was coming off the shoulder injury that Troy Aikman spilled the beans on during the NFC Championship game last year. Matthew Stafford is physically not correct. And then you add in the fact that he had a rib injury against the Cowboys this week. He's been dealing with a calf problem. Like, the dude is just so injured. And I know it's football, so we don't give that passes.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Matthew Stafford's a crazy person, and because there's no one thing you can point to, the physical ailments that is like, okay, this is something that might possibly keep him out. It's the constant pain and toil of football, and Matthew Stafford's just experienced it earlier than everyone else had. I mean, Justin Herbert's still playing with like torn rib cartilage, and he's not showing up on the injury report. Matthew Stafford has been so broken. And
the NFL, would still have to. I believe there's penalties for not showing up someone injured on the injury report.
No, yeah, you're correct in terms of like he doesn't have a specific one injury. He's just physically like a lesser version of himself. And most football players are. I mean, Matthew Stafford won a Super Bowl with a torn shoulder last year, so like obviously the excuse only goes so far. It's just it's not the only problem with the Rams. It's just the most glaring problem is that they're paying Stafford a lot of money to overcompensate for the fact that paying Stafford means you don't get to have Robert Woods. You don't get to have Todd Gurley. You don't get to spend big money at those spots, and it hasn't worked out.
But should he show up on the injury report for the part of his brain that controls decision-making? Because it's clear that there's some decision-making issues as well whenever you're watching his game, because these interceptions are just really bad interceptions. They're literally like targeting the defenders on the other team. They're interceptions that if it was Jameis Winston would be like, of course, the classic Jameis Winston type interceptions, because they're right too, guys. They're bad ones. If you are suffering through these elbow injuries, these shoulder injuries, then why are you still attempting deep balls like he is? Because these deep balls just kind of like look like just balloons waiting to get plucked from the air. Is that play calling? Is that Matthew Stafford? Where's the disconnect? Because clearly Sean McVay or one of these guys has to be the bigger man, the bigger voice in the room and say, okay, the offense is clearly a little stilted, clearly a little stale right now. We need to change up our philosophy. Why aren't we getting a guy like Allen Robinson involved? Allen Robinson, maybe he's not quite the receiver he was that we thought he was when he was obviously when he was in Jacksonville or at the early part of his career with the Bears. But in week 1, he was averaging 3 yards of separation. So it's clearly the ability is still there. Why aren't we getting him involved? Why aren't we just dialing up plays for him? Why is this such a uncreative offense now?
I've seen Sean McVay adapt and change his offense a couple times over the last 3 to 4 years. And this year leads me to believe that the problem is personnel more than it is the scheming around the personnel itself. And it's frustrating when Allen Robinson doesn't get receptions or targets because of, the fact that he's a big time free agent guy, a fantasy owner. We've seen him do it with lesser quarterbacks in worse situations. I think it's personnel. And I think the reason it's personnel from the very beginning is Matthew Stafford is injured and the offensive line is not the same offensive line that it's been the past few years. And that combination of problems leads to Matthew Stafford's deep balls getting intercepted more often. Because like dumb Matthew Stafford interceptions have been a thing his entire career. Like it's the reason Matthew Stafford is not a 7-time Pro Bowler and an actual Hall of Famer is that, yeah, Matthew Stafford makes dumb interceptions all the time. And it's usually they go for pick sixes. That's been the thing since he was in Detroit.
He's one Jaworski Tart drop away from none of the praise that we're giving on him this year going in.
Yeah.
And in fact,
Matthew Stafford's been that dude forever. The problem this year is that he's not putting up any yards because he's basically like game managing because that's all he can physically do.
I know that they don't really have a good pivot on the Rams. And I know that going back to the offseason, the Rams were one of those teams that was kind of getting rumored in the Jimmy Garoppolo sweepstakes if he got cut.
Are you saying that Sean McVay's undying love for John Wolford will not continue into the regular season?
Because at a certain point, like we're having the same conversation with Matt Ryan and we're having the same conversation with Russell Wilson, like at what point are you hurting your team?
Well, so this is the interesting thing. Like he had surgery on the elbow this offseason and it just didn't recover in enough of a time period because he was squeezing a 6-month recovery into like 3 months coming off the surgery. And so because he doesn't have to have another procedure theoretically, that's why the diminished play has been out there. And I thought coming off of week 1, they should have just sat down Stafford and given the elbow time to recover and said that was the reason he was out. Even if it was a combination of the shoulder and the elbow and the calf, they should have sat him down and gave him the proper recovery time. But that's not how football culture works, right? Like Matthew Stafford sped up his recovery so that he would be able to play. All the incentives are there for him to play because the Rams might not be able to survive missing 8 games of Matthew Stafford. So I think it's just a matter of protecting the long-term health. And like you were bringing up with them going to the top of the draft, I don't think it's that egregious for the Rams. They're better than the Giants, but
not that they could because they're not even in the draft.
No, they're better than the Giants. So like it's not like end of the world DEFCON 9, but like they're ranked 18th in the league in defensive DVOA, despite the fact they have Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald, who are the 2 best players at their position. So, I mean, unless Donald and Ramsey are not having good seasons, then I'm just not seeing that because I'm not the smartest football trained eye in the world. Like something is clearly coming up short on that defense as well. And the offensive line is a much lesser product. And yeah, the Rams are like a fringe playoff team this season. And if Matthew Stafford doesn't stay healthy, I mean, fortunately for them, there's only like 5 good teams in the NFC. So they might like sneak into the playoffs. But the idea of saying the Rams are sneaking into the playoffs is a little bit crazy.
Yeah, you also have to factor in their last 2 opponents. Maybe it's a little bit of that. They're clearly playing the 2 of the better defenses in the league when you consider the Niners and Cowboys. I think the obvious fix is you have to start getting Allen Robinson by hook or by crook involved in this offense because you just can't be as one-dimensional as they are because teams are starting. You go back to 2 weeks ago in the Monday night game, Talanoa Hufanga knew where the ball was going. That is why he waited on that pick 6 to just jump in front of Cooper Kupp and take it back to the house. You just need to make yourself different. I don't know if that's targeting the tight end more. That was one adjustment that Sean McVay made a couple years ago that kind of helped the Rams offense kind of find some steam. But whatever they're doing, it just isn't it. Again, going back to the original point, though, you are facing a team, 11-point spread here. You're playing the Panthers. This is the type of game that you should get right in. The Panthers defense, though, they can cause issues. I think the Panthers defense can cause issues. And that's the one thing I would say that if you told me that this game, Panthers plus 11, I could see you taking it. Even with the problems that the Panthers have on offense, we've also seen those weird circumstances whenever your coach is fired and the team amps up for a week. So I kind of like the Panthers as sneaky plus 11 play. Obviously, I'm picking the Rams as the winners outright. You figure JC Horn is going to be the main person covering Cooper Kupp this week. I think that this might be like one of those sneaky kind of like games that's closer than we think it should be.
I'm going to go back to the same thing. I mean, you're talking about all those options that they have to try and get people involved, whether it's Robinson or Higbee or Van Jefferson. I still think it's personnel. I think the Rams' problem is personnel more than it is the schemes themselves. And maybe they want to try and F them picks and go all in again. But I think there's There's a lot of issues on the team, issues that existed last year that I think were masqueraded by the fact that they had Von Miller, they had a healthy Matthew Stafford, they had Whitworth, they had a good offensive line. This is the ramifications, pun intended, of going all in for all of those seasons, and now one or two injuries ends up like being the Jenga block that makes the tower crumble. I am also going to go with the Rams to win this game because the Panthers are absolute bare booty ass cheeks and just fired their coach.
What about with the points?
If Carolina's going to win, it's going to be a backdoor cover. I'm not going to say that that's not going to happen, but if it's going to be Carolina, it's going to be a backdoor cover probably.
Okay. PJ Walker week. Looks like Baker Mayfield is doubtful. So looking forward to that. Former Houston Roughneck. Go out there, kick the Rams' ass, make them 2-4. I want to see it. Anyway, guys, leave a like on the video. Comment below your thoughts on what is going on with the Rams, what their struggles are. Subscribe to the channel. Follow us on social media. Juju, Kyle, stay safe, happy, healthy. We'll see you on the next one.